Hi guys, welcome back to Rally the Readers. I'm Molly and this is the second video in this outfit with this makeup look because it's the second video I'm filming today and also the second video that I'm filming ever. So I'm still a bit nervous, learning the ropes still, getting used to this whole talking into a camera thing. Today's video, we're talking about what I've read during lockdown. I came home in March. Lockdown has been going on for around 100 days now. And I've read 13 books. That's like an average amount, I think, on BookTube to read on that kind of period of time. I'm quite a slow reader. Sometimes I can read really fast, but most of the time I have other hobbies. I don't like spend all of my time reading. So I think 13 books is pretty good for like 2.5 months, 3 months. So I'm just gonna get into what I've read. It's wide ranging. I found a new genre I love, and I started a book series and I've almost finished a book series. The first book series I've finished, I think, ever. Yeah, that's bad, isn't it? Let's just get into the books I've read during lockdown. Also, remember to like, comment and subscribe. If you want to comment, let me know what you read during lockdown. Let me know if lockdown has been good for you, like your reading. Has it been a hindrance or a help? Even if you're not in lockdown and you're just, you know, struggling with the stress of a global pandemic and political unrest, let me know like how books have helped you and if they have. So the first book I read during lockdown is Normal People by Sally Rooney. Now, this book has a lot of hype at the moment. The BBC Three series came out, I want to say in April. I still haven't watched it because this book broke me. If you don't know what it's about two people, Marianne and Connell, and them going from like sixth form, like years like 17, 18, to the end of their degrees at uni, so 21, and just their on again, off again, like relationship and just their lives together. Marianne felt too real. She felt too close to home for me. She felt very much like how I saw myself in like sixth form, and also I kind of had to separate myself from her, and I've got very entwined in her and her story and her development, and I think that's why it really broke me. Like, it says a lot about how good the writing is, but it also gets me like, it got me really emotional, and that's why I just can't watch the show. I just can't. I gave it 4 stars because it was beautifully written and the characters were so great. I don't know if I liked how real it felt, and I know that's kind of a bad way to judge a book because obviously that shows that the writing's good because I felt so part of it, but I don't know if I liked it, that experience. I feel like it was very difficult to get through. So it's Normal People. I can finally be one of those cool kids who have read Normal People. I know someone who has a tattoo of the sardine can, and I think it's one of the prettiest tattoos ever. And if it weren't for the fact this book destroyed me, I'd probably contemplate getting something like that. Maybe just like I Heart Connell, like on my chest, like, because who doesn't love Connell? Like, how can you? Even like, is it Paul Mescal? My little sister like looks at compilation videos of him all the time. But like, he's beautiful, Connell's beautiful, we stan. Next books I read during lockdown were 2 books I grabbed from my little sister's bookcase because I was waiting for a Waterstones order and I didn't know what to read, and my little sister is a literature student. She has so many different books of so many different genres that I decided I'm just gonna pick some up from her, and she gave them to me in the end because she was never gonna read them. It's not her genre. I read The Martian and then Artemis by Andy Weir. The Martian was incredible. I feel like it's one of my like new favourite books. Mark Watney is such an incredible character. I feel like he's so hilariously funny. Like, I laughed out loud multiple times. But also, like, different to how he is in the film, he has a lot more like vulnerability and a lot more like humanity in him. And it just made you really feel for him and made you really want him to succeed. I loved the way it went back and forth between NASA and Mark, and also the rest of the Hermes mission, I think they're called the missions. How like it showed every side of that, like getting them back together. I'm also a sucker for books and stories in general about like the inner workings of like big organizations, especially like the inner politics of them. And I feel like all the discussions around whether they should get Mark Watney back that happened in NASA and like how they should do it was like really exciting for me. I love that kind of thing, and I just love this book. I feel like Andy Weir does an amazing job at making it feel like really realistic. Like, no one's been to Mars yet. Like, it's not something that's normal in our like zeitgeist, but it was so good, and you really like felt you knew what the habitat was like. You felt in the habitat, and you felt as much jeopardy for Mark Watney as I think you possibly could. Like, I was there with him for the entire journey, and I love this book so much. I gave it 5 stars in the end. After I read The Martian, I moved on to Andy Weir's second book, Artemis. This takes place, don't know how many years, but like quite a while after like The Martian. Like, if this is like 20 years into the future, this is like 125 years. They're like different, they don't exist in the same universe in the sense of like, it's not like progression with the characters and stuff, but it's about a girl called Jazz who has grown up on the moon. She's part of the first colony of humans on the moon, and she becomes involved in a weird like corporate espionage plot, I think is the best way to describe it. And it's like her dealing with that, being an adventurous, arrogant girl. And yeah, I think characters, like these kind of strong, confident, independent, know-it-all characters, can toe the line between being annoying and like being like empowering. And I feel like Jazz veered on the side of like annoying in this book. I feel like she didn't have the credentials to back up what she was saying. So I kind of struggled with that, and there was a lot of moments where I was like, you could have been better off if you had listened to the people that you just vehemently don't want to. Like with The Martian, the way that Andy Weir builds this world is incredible. It's so far from what I think people expect, like not expect, but how so far from how real life is, that you shouldn't be able to picture it so well. But it felt so real, it felt so logical as well, like the logical progression from like space travel to like the space colony. I also really loved the way he held on to like cultures from Earth on the moon, because this is the first generation of people on the moon. They all came from areas that had different cultures, and Jazz's dad is a practicing Muslim, and there's a whole discussion about how he builds certain things so he can pray in the direction of Mecca, even though it's much harder to do because he's on a moon. So I found that extremely like interesting and extremely important. I feel like not only like, I feel like sci-fi lacks a lot of diversity, and I think having a main character who is, her family's from Saudi Arabia originally, and her dad being a practicing Muslim, and like the discussions of that are really important. And I did like this, and I was very excited during the whole book, but I didn't like the characters as much, and the story felt like it could have been avoided. Corporate espionage may not be my favourite trope. Is that a trope, corporate espionage? Maybe. In the end, I gave this 4 stars. I went to grab my drink and my laptop fell in the bin, so that's a win. Next book. I haven't finished this. This is The Thing Around Your Neck by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This is a collection of short stories by Adichie, and I read 3 stories, the first 3 stories, and it is amazing. I love Adichie so much. I read Purple Hibiscus when I was in year 11, I think, so when I was 16, like 15, 16, and it just blew my mind. I feel like it introduced me to things I'd never realised. Like, I didn't know anything about Nigeria. I didn't know like the cultural differences. Like, obviously I knew there were some cultural differences, but I didn't realise how stark some of them are, not even just between me and like Nigeria, but also like between the different like ethnic groups in Nigeria. That's something that's touched on in this book actually. One of the stories is about a Hausa Muslim and an Igbo Christian, and how they kind of are forced together because of a riot, and like how they realise that they're actually both human, like that they didn't realise the tensions were as like shallow, instead like not shallow because that undermines it, but so rooted in just misunderstanding. This book explores many of the things that are explored in Purple Hibiscus, discussions of colonialism and the impact of British colonialism on communities in Nigeria, like the long-lasting effects, like some of like the patriarchal standards, the standards of Christianity and things like that. Also discussion of like a lot of the internal politics of Nigeria. Sorry about that, my window is open because it's bloody hot in the UK. And I'm wearing a jumper because I'm an idiot. So, it talks about that kind of thing. Talks about like college protests that take place in Nigeria, and just like how tumultuous it can be in lots of areas. And I think it's really important to read outside of like what you know, especially because of what's happening with Black Lives Matter. And I feel like this book is an amazing window into like various different pockets of what Nigeria is like and the experiences of people within Nigeria. But I also think what DK does so well is it's not just about a book about Nigeria and what it is to be a Nigerian. It is a book about people and an amazing short stories about things that just, no matter who you are, will hurt you. Like, they're sad stories. They will hurt you, but that's part of the beauty of it, and I love Adike so much. The stories I read so far, I'd give between 4 and a 5. I love her so much, and I can't wait to finish this, but I just thought, reading the short stories, they're individual stories, I tell you about them now. Next book is a fun one. It's a really fun, light-hearted book about torture post 9/11. This book is The Dark Side by Jane Mayer. So, my favourite area of politics to research is what happened post 9/11 in America, specifically in the justification of the war on terror, and how the war on terror essentially just allowed the US government to break the Constitution, to break just general human decency, and how it led to the torturing of mainly innocent Muslim men. And this book is incredible. It is just everything you need to know about that time. It is devastating, it is heartbreaking for some of the things you find out, and it really opens your eyes to how illogical that time was and how like the legacy of it still goes on. Like, Guantanamo Bay wasn't shut until during Obama's second term. I don't know the year, but like things like that, it's devastating. If you've seen The Report on Amazon Prime, a film with Adam Driver, the love of my life, then this is kind of the same like idea. This is the kind of like substance behind that film, and it talks about like black sites and the torture programs, what happened at Abu Ghraib. If you care about people and humanity and the importance of like unbiased Supreme Courts and the law, this book is a must read. And I feel like just looking into what happened in America post 9/11, it's a must read. It is devastating. It's hard read, like not just emotionally, but it's also, you know, if I'm not American, I also don't study American politics, so learning about all the different systems, all of the different initialisms, there are so many initialisms in this book. It's a difficult read, but it's an important read, and I gave it 5 stars. It genuinely blew my mind and just continued my interest in this subject and reminded me how important it is. I might do a video at some point like putting together like some of my like key political books that are like important to read and interesting to read about politics, and I think this has to be there because it changed like my view of everything, and like that's so important. Next book I read is The Children Act by Ian McEwan. Now, Ian McEwan is my favourite author. Atonement is my favourite book. And like, I'm trying to work my way through his entire bibliography. I've read a lot at this point. I want to do a video where I talk about like everything about Ian McEwan's books and like rank them and like tell you my favourites and where I think you should start. The Children Act was really, really good. I feel like it was different to a lot of them because it takes place over like 2 days. Like, the book is very quick and slow at the same time. I feel it's very Ian McEwan. Like, it takes place over such a short amount of time, but you feel every minute of that time matters, and he writes like every minute of that book, like of that story. I found it a bit difficult because Ian McEwan likes to veer on the side of the taboo, and I feel like he should either commit to taboo or not, and this book kind of teetered on that line too far. I think the way that the character of the main boy like develops is like a bit too on the fence with the taboo. The book's about, I haven't even told you what the book's about. The book is about a lawyer, a family, like a high court judge, family lawyer, who has to preside over a case of a 17-year-old boy who is a Jehovah's Witness. He's also got terminal cancer, and because of his Jehovah's Witness beliefs, he wants to refuse a blood transfusion. However, that blood transfusion would save his life. So it's about her coming to that decision and the impact he has on her life and she has on his life. And I liked the character of the boy, like the relationship between her and the boy was very good until Ian McEwan decided, I'm gonna be a bit taboo in this. And yeah, it wasn't, I didn't think it worked as well as it has in other books. And I also think parts of the twists, like Ian McEwan's books have like twists. Most of them do, at least. Like, if you read Amsterdam by him, blew my mind. Craziest twist I think I've ever read in a book. But I feel like the kind of subtle twist in this towards the more taboo didn't work as well. I just don't think it's his strongest. I still loved it. Like, the prose was still absolutely beautiful. I think because I know like Stanley Tucci and Emma Thompson are the two, like, the married couple in this book. In the movie, I haven't seen the movie, but they, like, having that in my head like really made me like see the book and appreciate the characters more. I think it was really nice reading a character, like, there's a series of books that I've read in quarantine that I read some of before I read this, and I feel like having a strong female character who wasn't arrogant, who was mature and could make level-headed decisions was extremely refreshing after the series that has stole my entire life. So I really did like that. I would give it like 3.54 stars. It's definitely not my favourite, but if you like Ian McEwan and you like the way he does his prose, like, I would definitely read it. I still think it's worth the time. He is an exquisite author, and every book is a joy, even if the plot isn't that much for me. I think it's time we tackle the elephant in the room, which is the fact that I didn't read all these books. I didn't read all these books in one go. They just crumbled in my hands. Great, we love. I read a big series. Well, I'm still reading. I'm 2 books away from the end. I started a series in between all these books, and these books kind of like broke up the series because, Jesus Christ, it is intense. That series is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I'm not proud of this decision. I've owned this book for like 2 years. My friend really loves this series, and so I bought it, but at the time I didn't really want to read it anymore. Like, I got it and I heard like justified negative reviews of the series, and I was just like, maybe not. I came back home and I brought only Ian McEwan books with me, and they're intense, and so I wanted something silly, easy YA trash essentially, and so I picked up this, and oh my god, I am obsessed. I have become 16 again, against all my better judgment and all of my literary fiction reading and diverse like cultural reading. Nah, this is this is what's captured my attention. The first book in the series follows a assassin. I think she's 18-year-old assassin called Selena Sardofian in this fantasy kingdom, and she is a slave in a mine. It's been a long time. So much has changed in the series. She's a slave in a mine, and she is called to the kingdom by the crown prince, Dorian Haviard, and his like best friend and head of the King's Guard, Cole Westerfell. I always pronounce it Cole. I think it's meant to be Kale. Cole. There's so many weird names in this book that I'm just pronouncing them how I want. But she's summoned by them to become their champion in this competition the king's running to be the king's champion and eventually become his personal assassin. This book like shows like what's happening like in the trials and the competition, and also has like a little subplot of like the chosen one, of Selena's fate to like defend the world against evil is essentially what it is. This series, I'm reading it for the romance, like I will not lie. Like this has got a love triangle. Every other book in this series has beautiful men with beautiful love stories. Oh, can I hold them all? Is this gonna be something I can do? Oh. Should my thumbnail be just this? Because I feel like I'll be judged. Yeah, they carry on. They get huge as well. Like, I'm on the 6th book, Tower of Dawn, and the next book in the series, the last book, is Kingdom of Ash, and it is 900 pages long. I am not looking forward to reading this because I know it will make me cry. I know it'll take me ages. Getting into this series was maybe not the best idea, but you know, we move, we deal with it. Review wise, I think I'd give Throne of Glass and Heir of Fire maybe 4 stars. No, not Heir of Fire. Crown of Midnight, 4 stars. I feel like compared to the later books, they're so small in scope that you just kind of have to like, I just can't help but see them as less good than the later ones. Heir of Fire and Queen of Shadows, I think it is. No. Yeah, Heir of Fire, Queen of Shadows are my favourites. I love Rowan. He is everything to me. That's what I have to say. I love all the characters. I'm a big fan of like camaraderie stories, like big like groups of friends getting together and, you know, fighting evil, and that's where this series is really going, and I love every aspect of that. I like how it's more perspective. I love the romance. I love the steamy scenes. Sarah J. Maas should just be a smart writer, to be honest. I feel like she'd be excellent at it. But no, I'm not proud, but I'm enjoying it. I think that's the best way to say it. So yeah, that was a huge chunk of what I've read so far. 2 books to go. I'm very scared. I want to do a reading vlog for when I do Kingdom of Ash, because I feel like I'm gonna have a lot of feelings, and I will want to share them. I know I'm very late to the series, and I know that I'm like, you know, I should know better, but I'm enjoying it, and you know what? Can't deny what you love, can you? Okay, 3 more books to read. Well, 3 more books that I read to get through. Next, we're back on it. We're back on it with the weird political books. Not weird, it's the Communist Manifesto. It's like the most well-known political book maybe ever. This was an interesting experience for me because I've studied Karl Marx for like 4 years on and off, and so I know the content of this book. I've read like so much about the Communist Manifesto. I've read so much about Das Kapital. I know what Marx stands for, but it was really interesting reading it in like the actual true text. I struggled with it because it was written in 1848, and so it's written like it was written in 1848 is all I can say, and there's a lot of history in it. There's like history from the 1800s, so like the 1600s, 1700s, which I knew nothing about and had to do a lot of Googling on. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I guess I didn't gain much from it because, like I said, I know a lot about it, but I was interested to see how it kind of predicted things like globalization and Thatcherism of the 1980s and just neoliberalism in general. That was like really strange to me that it was able to predict it. I also loved the introduction, was by Yanis Varoufakis, who is an economist. I think he used to be the economic minister for Greece, like during the Eurozone crisis. So he's incredible. I really want to read some more of his books, and I think that added a lot to it, like highlighting some of the like ways that this is a weird, freaky premonition about what happened to the rest of the world like 100 years later. But I don't know, you can't really give this a star rating, can you? It's like a seminal piece of political literature. Like, who am I to say if Mr. Karl and Mr. Frederick Engels deserve 5 stars? Like, they've transformed lives. This is not a 5-star. This is not like a starable book. But, I mean, you have to read it. Like, I would recommend, like, almost like Spark Note seeing the Communist Manifesto before you read it, but I feel like it's important to read it. Like, it's shameful that I have been studying maths for 4 years and I still haven't properly read it. And it's literally only like the actual book itself is like 40 pages. The other bit is like all Yanis Varoufakis' like introduction. So definitely a must read. Also, this edition is beautiful. It's the Penguin Vintage 19th Century Politics edition, I think. So I would recommend Communist Manifesto. If you just are interested in socialism in general, not even just like as a socialist, just as someone who wants to understand it, I think this is a really important place to start. The last 2 books I don't have on me because one was Audible and one was on Kindle. My Audible book is Becoming by Michelle Obama, and I adored it. I normally like to read non-fiction on audiobook because I'm a big podcast fan, and so just listening to an audiobook, like a non-fiction audiobook, is just like listening to a podcast. I adored Becoming. I didn't realise I'd like it as much as I did. Not only did it teach me a lot about like the Obama administration from like Michelle Obama's point of view, and just like about Michelle Obama's life before being, you know, the First Lady and before even being married to Barack. I think it was an amazing like view into her life, and like quite important to be able to humanize someone who was in such a high up position and became like an idol to many people. It also taught me just about being an adult, almost like being a woman, being a strong career woman, and being like a wife and a mother in a way, like how to balance 2 like strong career driven people in the same marriage. And I think it gave a lot of like hope. It filled me with a lot of hope that you can do, like, no matter your change of circumstances, you can do something good, and you can kind of do something that you love, even if it's not specifically what you set out to do. Like, she wanted to work in, like, she was working in a hospital, like, as a coordinator of, like, outreach campaigns and things like that, and she had to give that all up when Barack Obama ran for president, and she still managed to turn what she was doing at that work and what she cared about into what she did in the White House. And I know it's like an upgrade, like it's a privilege to be able to do that, but I think it just highlights that a change of circumstance doesn't mean like a change of like what you care about and your values. And I also think it was interesting to hear about what it's like to be a black woman, like a strong black woman in America. I am a white girl in England, and so it's completely different to my experience, and I found it really interesting to see how difficult she found it, and how difficult, like, and how much the country was like ready for someone like that, but also met them with hostility. So genuinely a 5-star book. I couldn't recommend it anymore, and it genuinely changed my view of the world and of like what it means to be a woman. So chef's kiss. The last book I read kind of feeds into my new little sci-fi love that was started by Artemis and the Martian, and that is Illuminated by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I read that on my Kindle. Well, I read it on my laptop on the Kindle app, and I think that was the best way to experience it because it felt very natural to the form, because the book is made up of like news clippings, transcripts of interviews, transcripts of CCTV video, stuff like that. IM messages, so it felt very natural to the format to have it on like my laptop. It was exciting. It was like fast paced. I want to continue the series. Like, it really got me excited, and like really fun way of doing sci-fi. It's about a war that goes on between two companies and these two refuge ships from the planet that is just attacked, and like two people in that kind of like organized, like, it's about two teenagers who have just broken up when the planet is attacked, and them on their separate refuge ships communicating and like dealing with a lot of crazy stuff that goes down whilst they're on their refuge ships. And it was extremely exciting. I feel like, I've forgotten the main girl's name, but her character definitely toes the opposite side of the line, where she had the skills to back up her arrogance, like her confidence, where it was like you could get behind her character and you could understand why she was so kind of like headstrong. I'm trying to use words that aren't like bad, negatively gendered, but I feel like characters are very easily to that for. I don't know, I need to get better at that. Anyway, and I love Ezra. He was the male, like the main guy, and I loved him. He's such a sweet, soft boy, and I just, when he lost his dad, the spoilers kind of, when he lost his dad, I was just like crying, and I think he's just a beautiful character. I just hated the ending. Like, I was in it literally until like the last like 10 pages. I knew it was a trilogy, but because it was like a war story, I thought that maybe you could do, I feel like the best way they could have done it is 3 individual stories of 3 different like groups of people involved in this war. I feel like there's a lot of ways that you could do that, but the ending became extremely unrealistic and just kind of cheapened the whole thing for me. I love happy endings, and this, like, the end of this book is kind of a happy ending, but I feel like it just felt unrealistic to the way the rest of the book was going, literally until the last like 20 pages. So I don't know, I think I'd give it like 3 stars. Like, it was exciting and like I really enjoyed the plot, but the ending just really let me down, and I'm worried about the other books if that's the way it's gonna go. Like, it was like a plot twist that just was cheap and overdone, and it could have been much better, I feel. So that was everything I read during lockdown so far. Lockdown still isn't over, sadly, but I moved into my new house in July, like I said, and July felt like the right time to like start doing TBRs and wrap-ups, especially because I'm starting the series, like this channel, right before July anyway. So I thought before I do like monthly wrap-ups and TBRs, I just let you all know what I've been reading, and I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you've been reading during lockdown and whether it's been a good time for you to read. I know for some people it's been really stifling to read during this time, so please let me know in the comments how it's been reading in this time and just how you're all feeling. You know, I'd love to talk to you guys in the comments. Make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to rally the readers.